Treasurer, thanks very much for your presentation, and it's clear from the way you delivered it that you've been living and breathing this and really want to be able to communicate what it is that you're trying to achieve. We are going to try and get as many questions from the floor as we can this morning. So if you have a question to ask, we've got a few roving mics. Please put up your hand and make yourself known to those roving mics. And I'll ask a question to begin with so that you can get your question ready. And then we'll open it to the floor and squeeze in as many as we can. So keep your questions short, and I'm sure the Treasurer will keep his answers short and snappy, and we'll fit as many in as we can. So Treasurer, just to get the ball rolling, some good news on the economy coming into this budget. It's good to see a bit of an uptick in terms of employment and economic growth. And I know that in the lead up, you talked a lot about the need to balance austerity and getting the budget back on track with encouraging the green shoots in the economy. Do you feel like you've done enough on the green shoot side of things?
Yeah, look, I think we have, and you're right. I think the editorial of today's West said we could have gone tougher. And as I said, we probably could have, but that decision was made. The Premier and I had these conversations on a daily basis around trying to get a balance in there so that you didn't, as I said, destroy that confidence, that you've got assumptions around household consumption, which I'm very keen to foster and support, because ultimately that's something that has really been in its shell for a long period of time. I think we have. State governments, the levers are so blunt and they can have such a dramatic impact that you've got to be careful with them. And I think we have been careful with them because the expectations are, those who follow the budget will see SF, state final demand in particular, which is anyone who isn't directly engaged in the mining sector will be familiar with what's been happening with the domestic economy. It's been unattractive for about 5 years now, contracting for 5 years. Bringing that back into a period of growth is very important, and you'll see from 1920 business investment increasing again. I want to support that, and state governments can, if you're a bit ham-fisted with some of your decisions, you can get in the way of that, and we've been keen not to. And I think we have struck that balance.
And just on the payroll tax, I mean, you did spend quite a bit of time on payroll tax in your presentation. But most economists think about payroll tax as a tax on employment. Obviously, increasing jobs was one of your election commitments. I mean, given that you were going to break an election promise anyway in terms of increasing taxes, were you not tempted to go back and have a look at asset sales?
Thank you, Tracy. Coming back to the payroll tax, Deirdre Wilmot staring at me here, sort of looking around. I think the payroll tax decision, and I have had a range of conversations with a number of people who head up or are senior in organisations that will be impacted by that. I think it's one that is it's a reasonable decision. I accept the arguments against payroll tax that are made by the CCI and others, but I think when you have so few levers, you've got to resort to them occasionally, and I think we've done a way that has been targeted. As I said, the 5-year period in particular was one I was determined to keep, just so that there isn't a reliance. You put in a revenue source for a government and it stays, you're very rarely going to see it go again. So that's been the key focus of this one. Asset sales, clearly Western Power is not one that's being revisited. TAB may happen, but that's still going through, and Treasury are doing some valuations around that at the moment. But there's some work to do with industry about where we land on that. But the one that I guess that is always raised is Western Power. That was a not insignificant part of the election campaign. We won't be going back on that. And that was, I'm also Energy Minister. To be frank, that wasn't a decision of energy policy. That was a decision of fiscal response. I think what we're doing, returning to a surplus by 2020-21, admittedly, that is really the more sustainable way to deal with the net debt issue. Selling off assets and not dealing with the spending side of things is almost pointless.
Okay, we've got a few questions from the floor, so we'll start off here at the front, please. And if you could just state your name and organisation and keep it short.
Thanks, Tracy. Ray Wills. I'm here today as a board member of Horizon Power, and we're improving services, reducing costs, and looking forward to the future where we'll be engaging in renewable energy and particularly battery storage. You mentioned in your budget speech about the emerging lithium industry, and so I just wanted to get your comments on what you see as downstreaming of the lithium industry and the value adding we can potentially do in the state.
Thanks, Ray. On the board of directors of Horizon, another organisation of mine. You're right, my budget speech made some specific references to lithium and the opportunities there. Clearly, for a long time yet, mining royalties to the state or mining and its application in WA will be dominated by the sheer volumes of iron ore that we're exporting and what that does for our consolidated account. Lithium, though, has some is creating huge opportunities in respect of also downstream processing, but also the demand for, and we're seeing this in Horizon. To be frank, out of all my utilities, Horizon has done a lot of work in this because of the nature of the organisation, the development of battery technology in particular, which will fundamentally transform the energy sector in Western Australia, as it will do around the globe. And I think there's just a lot of opportunity there, Ray, and Horizon in particular in the work around smart meters, now that you've got me onto energy, smart meters around small scale renewable at this point, but also microgrids. Really, Horizon is leading the way on that. And I think you'll see once we've got the regulatory regime updated around Western Power also getting into that space in a much more aggressive way.
So we have a question in the middle. Oh, no, sorry. Over on the right-hand side.
Thank you, Treasurer. My name's Ian Murray from Gold Road Resources. From my name, I'm sure you know what the question is leading to. I noticed on your chart you spoke about the drop in investments in WA. More recently, there has been increase in investments from the gold space, driven by very good brownfields exploration by the current producers and greenfields exploration by some of the juniors. There are 3 new gold development projects underway, a number of other expansion projects by the producers. All of these have been found through exploration. The increase in the royalty is going to curtail and reduce the exploration being done in the country, and that's going to impact on Indigenous employment in the areas and further growth of gold projects in Western Australia. I'm just keen to hear what your response is to that, because short-term increase in royalties leading to longer-term reduction in growth.
Yeah, and thank you for the question. Unsurprisingly, I'll probably disagree with some of your conclusions, but I do appreciate the critique around the decision, I guess, implied in there. Look, the reason why we tiered gold was to protect against the any potential downturn. We have, I think from memory from the chart, we've been above 1,200 since about $1,200 an ounce. It's around 2008, 2009. We're now, yesterday, 1,671. We're now at a 12-month high. Tiering it above 1,200, I think, protects from any downside. I don't think that gold miners, having watched them and being part of them for a long, long time now, will react by cutting off exploration. I think that there is enough money being made at the moment in gold, bearing in mind the all-in sustaining costs, and I'm probably opening an argument here with a bunch of gold miners. You're around about $1,100 an ounce at the moment, at about $1,600 an ounce. An extra $20 an ounce, I think, is something that won't halt investment. It won't halt exploration. And as Minister Johnson announced just the other week, we are committed to our support and through the consolidated account of encouraging continuing exploration, because that's what Western Australia is built on. So I'm not sure I accept the consequence of an extra $20 an ounce being applied in being a draining of exploration, because I think ultimately miners are still looking for their next revenue source. They're not going to simply react in a way to simply cut off further efforts.
Okay, I think if we keep the questions really short, we can probably fit 2 more in, and we've got one over here, and then we've got Deirdre in the front here.
Morning, Treasurer. Dino Zhang from Three Oceans Property. If setting state asset is not option, would you consider public-private partnership? If so, when and how? Because I understand public money will never progress as quick as private money. You mentioned that the business spend has been slowed for quite some time, but you have to, if you want to encourage business spend, you have to give incentives and opportunities to private sector. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And just last week, and again, one of the wonderful things around when you're a new government, you get to turn the sod on work done by the previous government. I got to turn the sod at King Square in Fremantle last week. That's a classic, I guess, public-private partnership in respect of trying to rejuvenate an area for those who live in Freo. Can appreciate has been in dire need of investment for a long period of time. We're updating our unsolicited bids process to encourage more private sector innovation in some areas, and so I think that will encourage more private sector contributions to perhaps what the public sector can then partner with. But when you've got a balance sheet like we do, of course, we're looking at a range of different PPPs, and Metronet and our desire to value capture in that space is perhaps another classic example.
Okay, I'm afraid I've got the signal here that we have to wrap up because we do need to get everyone back to their office. Sorry, Deirdre, I did my best. So now we have Deb from Uber to thank the Treasurer.